Okay, this is Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I am very happy to welcome Steward Swerdlow on my show today. And Steward is a fascinating guy. He's written several books and was involved in the Montauk Project as a boy, from what I understand. And I'm interested in finding out what your point of view is, Steward, and welcome. Are you there?
Yes, thank you.
It's great to have you. I am going to be asking you questions about the Montauk Project. I'd like you to go over the past a bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'm sure you get a lot of that, and so I hope it's not too tiresome for you. But I think that we have some listeners here in Europe that may not be so familiar with the Montauk Project. I don't know if you know, but I got very involved with some people involved in the Montauk Project or involved in researching it. Peter Moon, for example. I got to know Peter and got involved with writing a treatment for a movie based on his books on the Montauk Project. And so I have a special fascination with that area. And then I'd also like to find out exactly where you think it's gone from there, and then get into maybe the future, your view of what's coming and so on and so forth. And so if you could introduce yourself also and describe some of your abilities and why you might have been chosen as a boy for the Montauk Project.
Sure, and I'm sure many of your listeners have read some of my books, and especially my autobiography, which was Montauk Alien Connection. And basically, it involved my family history, and I have to go back a little bit in time. My great-uncle, Yakov Swerdlov, was the first president of the Soviet Union. My grandmother was a Soviet spy during World War II, and my grandfather was sent to the United States back in the early 1920s to start the Communist Party, or help the Communist Party grow here in the United States in order to eventually, of course, quite gratefully didn't happen, merge with the Soviet Union. And so because of all of that, my family was very closely monitored by the United States government as well as other governments. And the loyalties, especially during the Cold War, were questioned. My father was kept in an underground base under El Paso during the Korean War. And when I was born, my birth itself was quite unusual because when my mother went into labor with me, when she went to the hospital, they told her it was absolutely impossible for her to be pregnant at all, because she did not have a birth canal and it was not possible for an egg to be fertilized. And so they took her to another wing of a hospital that was not even officially opened. There was not even heat in the building. And there just happened to be a doctor from Texas there who specialized, and I put that in quotes, in this particular procedure, which no one's ever seen before because it's in the medical books. And they actually performed surgery on her to create a birth canal and then literally pulled me out by my neck. So I was quite black and blue at the time. Many, many years later, decades later, I was told by certain people in the government that my birth was implanted and that I was not a natural birth or creation, if you will. Anyway, from that, my whole life has been quite odd. I always had abilities. I could see energy fields. I could see dead people, for example. Many times I would talk to them not knowing that they were dead. I had psychic abilities. But it wasn't until the Montauk Project began, and that project lasted from 1970 to 1983, where they actually enhanced my abilities, where they were trying to create a person who could see into other realities without the use of a device. And I'm making a very long story short. But in order to facilitate that, and whether this was intentional or not, I don't know absolutely, but I was physically blinded so that I could not see through my eyes. I only could see or perceive reality and energy of my brain. And they opened up portions of my brain that most people don't use. And so for many years, 29 years in fact, I could only see energy fields. I could see archetype symbols. I could see the auric field, the chakra system, or internal organs, all of these things. And in fact, I could see written words. I could perceive the energies in books and pictures and things like that, even though I was not physically seeing them. And then after 29 years of that, and of course, after 1983, the Montauk Project crashed, and I had surgery to reconnect the optic nerves to my brain so that I could perceive physical reality. And when the bandages came off, of course, I didn't know what I was going to be able to see, but I was seeing physical reality as an overlay of the energy. So it's kind of like a projector, if you will, with as many layers of energies where I could see the physical and the non-physical simultaneously. And that's how I do my work when I do readings with people. When I speak to them, I always ask for a full birth name and birth date, because that tunes in or fine-tunes the frequency, because most people, all people, exist in many realities at the same moment. And in order to fine-tune what you're seeing, what that person is at the moment in this reality, you need the birth name and date to extract that energy from what you're seeing. And that's basically how I do my work, and a brief synopsis of my background.
Oh, wow. Well, that's fascinating. I didn't, for some reason, I've read some of your books. I don't think I perceived or understood that you were actually blind. Were you literally physically blind for a certain number of years?
Yes, for 29 years. I could not see anything in front of me except energy.
Oh, wow. So
I could actually drive, but when it rained or snowed, I couldn't drive because the energy was so disturbing. Flashes of these energies in front of me, I couldn't do it.
Okay, so you negotiated life as a blind person or not?
Well, no one knew I was blind because I could see energy. I could talk to you and look at you, and you would never know I was blind.
Oh, I see. Okay, very interesting. Okay. So, continue. So when did Montauk start up for you? I mean, how were you recruited into the program and so on?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because in 1970 is when my family moved to central Long Island, and Montauk Project was located at the very east end of Long Island, and it was at that time in 1970 that these incidences began, where I would be taken from my bedroom and brought to this underground facility. Of course, at the time, in the beginning, I didn't know where I was. All I remembered was these stone walls. Sometimes they were concrete. It was very damp feeling, very cold, restrictive, kept in cages or even boxes. One time I actually escaped, ran through the whole system, the corridors, and people were chasing me, and I wasn't wearing any clothing. I was completely naked as a child, or actually just getting into puberty, running, trying to hide under tables and behind things, and they finally did catch me. But that's when I realized I'm in this very huge complex. I don't know where the heck I am. But this is not a pleasant place. And they did all kinds of experiments with me. And they also did, in which this part hasn't been emphasized so much in the books, but they did magic rituals and all kinds of esoteric events that would happen there with many people from all over the world. Okay.
Yes. In my research on this subject, by the way, I was living in New York City during 1983, and I was having interesting dreams at night of going down under the ground somewhere out in Long Island. And I didn't understand it, except that, I would be looking at a hillside, and all of a sudden, sort of a low hill, and all of a sudden I'd be going inside of it. And I also recall taking classes under the ground.
Yes.
And anyway, that was during 1983 and 1982, I guess it was. Maybe the 4 year. I was in New York for 4 years, and I had been out on Long Island, briefly visiting and so on. But when you were actually recruited, you said your family moved there, but what was the procedure by which you got involved? I mean, were you kidnapped?
Well, you could call it that. They would just take you. They have a technology which creates a wormhole. And a wormhole is different than a vortex. A vortex is a passage, if you will, from one reality to another reality. A wormhole is when they open a shortcut, an energetic shortcut from point A to point B within the same reality. So they could pinpoint energetically through technology that was given to them from alien civilizations. They could pinpoint a location even in someone's bedroom, put that into the equipment, a wormhole opens up, and they literally walk right into your room, and they can take you. They also have the ability to create a dampening field in the home so that people who are in there don't realize what's going on. They're either sleeping or they just ignore that particular area and they don't know why. But they have a way of making your disappearance unknown to the people until you come back. There were times, though, when someone would say to me, "Hey, I went in your room and you weren't there." And it was like middle of the night. Where were you? Did you go to the bathroom? Did you go downstairs? And I'd say, I couldn't even answer that question. And very often I would wake up and my bedroom would be in disarray, like someone had really trashed it. So there was a lot of evidence much of the time when I was taken, if you will. Kidnapping, I guess you could call it that, but I guess from the Montauk perspective, they don't call it kidnapping. They were just taking me for work.
Okay. And were your parents involved in this work?
My parents were not involved in work, at least on the surface. But, things happened to me over the years, even before Montauk, which were odd that I confronted them. My father, obviously, with the Russian connections and military connections, was an enigma and still is to this day. My mother used to bring me after school, before Montauk Project, every week, afternoon, to this Victorian mansion where I would be brutally examined. I was